Welcome to Inflection Point Podcast, where we cultivate change from the inside out as we ponder the Cairo question. Will Cairo have to protest in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? We stand on the belief that dismantling racism goes beyond laws and legislation or politics and economics. Here, anti-racism activation is presented as an inside job where personal transformation and accountability impact social change. So take a seat at the anti-racism activation table with Inflection Point Podcast.
We are dedicated to anti-racism activation and the art of listening and authentic conversation, engagement, and action. I am your host, Anita Russell, and here's a quick hello from co-hosts Mavis Bauman and Gail Hunter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mavis Bauman. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gail Hunter, and welcome.
Thank you. So in 2025, we turn our attention towards community engagement and the grassroots of change. So throughout the year, we explore the stories, the strategies, and the successes of community-driven movements that are making a difference. So each episode focuses on theory, practical examples, allowing our audience to gain insights that they can apply in their real-world community engaging efforts. So throughout the season, we introduce case studies as well as guests who reflect community engagement in action. So in this episode, we continue our case study of the Until We Are Free movement, a human rights organization led by formerly incarcerated criminal justice experts. They focus on building capital, resources, and support to provide pathways to civic and economic liberation for individuals disenfranchised by mass incarceration. So I am so happy to welcome our guest, Kevin Reese. And he is the co-founder and the co-executive director of Until We Are Free and co-founder and CEO of Until We Are All Free Consulting Group. So welcome, Kevin.
For having me. Yeah, that all sounds like, dang, we've done a lot. A few barriers. I remember when we said that, what we was about. That mission has been our standing mission for some years now. So it was great to hear it coming from the streets. Like, yeah, I remember that visioning session when we said, yeah, that's what we're about.
Excellent. Yeah. So just very briefly, I'm just going to get a level set with the audience so to kind of know a little bit about you, but we want to hear from you. So yes, Kevin, sure. Minneapolis, Minnesota, he spent 14 years incarcerated inside the criminal justice system. During that time, he founded The Bridge, a grassroots group of directly impacted criminal justice experts whose mission is to abolish mass incarceration and to find a path to true transformative criminal justice. As I was doing my research on you, I stumbled upon something called Rewriting Destiny, right? This article, and it really kind of talks about you and that whole entire process of transformation that you went through. The thing that really, really jumped out at me is when you had that conversation with God and you asked him, what is it that you're working on in my life? So I'd like to start there because I'd like you to share the story or the answer that God gave you and how that blossomed into something completely different. So we could start there and then kind of take a deeper dive into your personal story. But I just wanted to call that part out specifically because the whole idea of being incarcerated and rewriting your destiny is so powerful.
To you, that's your first question. That it's about God. Shout out to that. Yeah, sometimes God bring you down to your knees, right? And it was a moment. I mean, the first word that comes to mind is generational. I remember God told me that I was a part of a generation, and I'm responsible to and for my generation. And when I look to my left and my right, I love my generation of people so much, friends. So in a place like prison, when I say generational, when you're in prison with people that you play Sega Genesis with, right? So by the time you're 26 years old, and most of y'all been here since y'all was teenagers together, people that you grew up with when you're in prison. And I just had a generational moment of, actually, we got something to say. We're all fathers, brothers now, because now we're all talking and we all want the same thing. I've seen gang rivals be friends because we all know each other. I'm from the like the generation of what they call super predators. So folks that they maybe did some horrible things at a young age. I was in prison with them. I was one of them. But by the time we was all 25, 26, 27, man, we wanted family. We wanted out. We was, what the heck did we do? What were we doing? That was like our day-to-day reality conversation. So it birthed in that, and it was my generation of friends that say, "K Reese, you always been like this," because I started a group in prison, and my group in prison was simply for us to come together and ask this question: what got us here? What was keeping us here? And what is it that we need to do to get out and not only do okay, but to transcend these circumstances? We're still people. We're still somebody's. We all still had our swag and big dreams, man. Right? And you couldn't convince us that we could have big dreams still. So the moment that God responded was the respect of the group. Because it was a time when this group, according to prison rules, it was not right. More than 6 people couldn't gather. Right? You couldn't gather in more than 6, or it was considered a gang meeting. And nope, I started gathering more than 6. Shout out to the relationships by that time I had them built, and the way God saw to it that there were people that protected and gave space to me, correctional officers and people. It was bigger than me. And that's what brought me. So I would say a year or so after doing that, and I've facilitated this group of men, and after every group we hug and love each other, and just the respect that the table had. And this was no warden. This was considered this was like we were renegades, and all we were talking about, we were being creative. How I would come to every group, we would come with a topic, a theme, right? And we're gonna have like 3 questions. We're gonna all go around the table and talk about it. Right. We're gonna have some solutions. We bring in new information. So it was always exciting to read that week. And so after some years of doing that, it was the respect and love of my generation of people that I remember I went to my cell one day and I was like, "Oh God, you're doing something." Oh.
Mm.
And yeah, I pretty much dedicated my life ever since. Thank you for that question. You got to the root of something. Shout out to you. You kind of yeah, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah, because when I was reading it, it just literally drew me in.
Yeah, no, that was yeah, it was power bigger than me. Yeah, it was.
It came out of love. It came out of love for yourself, for God, and for others that were with you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That takes fear away. That just eliminates fear. When you can
change my life. So we can also, and then we're talking about Transformation Talk Radio. That was the moment that changed my life. And it was my community and my generational love that said, oh, because I had different plans. I'm gonna tell you, someone who come from poverty, a kid, like when I was 18 to about 25, my plans on what I thought I could do when I got out was different. Then, like after that experience in my life, and I woke up and I was different. And it was God gave me a pathway to give back, to make my life a life of service. And it not only changed my life, but it changed the life of the generation of people around me, because we all seen God keep his promise. Yeah. Imagine that. It's a generation of us that, like, yeah, so it's real mafioso. Like all of the brothers and sisters that we impacted over the years in prison, the thousands of people that my work impacted over my time incarcerated in Minnesota prisons. Oh, it's a real love. It's one of my protections in the city.
Amen.
Right, I run it, and they look like all kinds of things. They look like like I go to a spot, some of the people, and I'd be like, oh, these are my people that make me feel safe. Right? It's a real, and we all share that bond of seeing God keep his promise. So here in this town, Minneapolis, St. Paul, it's a pretty big deal. This until we all free hoodies, it means a lot here.
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
The other thing that really jumped out at you is also the writing aspect and how you use writing as that tool to rewrite your destiny. And so one of the things that I ran across this quote in one of your poems it's a book, Luckily Fish Don't Need Raincoats. First of all, the title just blew me away.
That's great.
Right?
Yeah.
That just blew me away. And it just kind of drew me in. And what I saw is that this is a debut collection of poetry, and it tells a story of a journey through an adverse childhood, your emergence through adolescence, and the painstaking process of that long-term incarceration. So you already gave us a little bit of a hint of what was happening during that process. But here's something that really, really jumped out at me. We were, and this is in reference to your grandmother, right? We were taught that if one go, we all go. My frame of collective liberation comes straight from my grandmother's garden of gems of light given to me so I can take them with me wherever I go. That's so powerful. When I saw it, I was like, oh, wow, that is amazing. So can you tell me a little bit about that book and how does that, in the meaning of that title, Luckily Fish Don't Need Raincoats, and how did that sort of become a part of your evolution, if you will, and the whole idea of rewriting your destiny?
Yeah, for sure. I'm someone who was raised by my grandma, was with my grandma since 7 days old, right? I was born in 1986 on the south side of Chicago. So I grew up with my grandma. So I'm kind of a country boy in a way. And for my grandma, it was a rallying call. That was what my grandma used to say when we had nothing. I need a motherfucker like a fish need a raincoat, right? My grandma used to say that. But I knew that meant we got nothing. And it was like a rallying call for strength for me growing up as a kid. And she probably only said it about 15 times in my life, right? But I never forgot it. And so I dedicated my first collection of poetry to her. It was the natural title of that. And to writing, they happened at the same time, right? When I began organizing in prison, I began writing in a literary sense. Shout out to my boy Z Caligiri. Z Caligiri is my brother and friend and someone that I was incarcerated with. But Zeke's a writer. Look him up. He has a book. So This Is Where I Am. We had there's a group in prison, the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop. So there was a program in there, like a writers collective. And my buddy Zeke, my generational friend, came to me and said, "Hey, Kev, you know you're a writer, right?" Like, what are you talking about, bro? You're a writer. Come on. It took me to writing class. And I've been writing ever since. He gave me some of his writing, and it was some of the most remarkable stuff I had ever read. And I realized all along I was a writer too, because I used to freestyle. If anybody is not familiar with freestyling is, I was a rapper. And as a teenager, I used to know how to freestyle and write raps and rhymes. But language, right? The power of language is everything, right? You know, prison systems is based, as a whole institutions of language. So when I got the chance to face language, it felt like a natural tool, a home. I felt right at home. So that's how I became a writer. They happened at the same time.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, I kind of read through some of the poems there, but that was the one thing that really, really jumped out at me because you talk about this generation, and I would say lots of folks, perhaps in your generation, being born, you said in the 80s, right?
Yes.
In that time, there was a lot of things going on socially in our communities and in that time period. So there were a lot of babies, a lot of kids who were being raised up by the grandmother. And so that wasn't my story, but I could connect to that because I knew so many other people who were kind of in that situation. So when I read that, it just really, really resonated with me.
Yeah, that's me, Reese.
Absolutely.
Yeah, raised by my grandma.
Yeah. So another thing that I had stumbled upon was this idea of the bridge. And so I found this article, it's called Darkness and Light, and it's about you and the creation of the bridge partnership. And when I read that, it kind of reminded me of, the conversation that you had with God. And so the question that popped into my mind is, what do you do when the answer to that question, your question was, God, what is it you're working on in my life? And so talk to me about the Bridge program and how you answered that question when the answer to how you received that answer, I should say, because the answer was build a bridge of people and be a bridge through and with people. So can you share a little bit about that? I mean, that was a very, very powerful statement. And then when I connected it over to the darkness and light and this whole thing around the bridge partnership, if you could share with our audience what that was all about.
Sure, I appreciate you. You asking questions right at the root of something reminding me. I've done so much since, and wow, thanks for the question. Yeah, the answer was I should start reaching out to people. Shout out to Generational. Another one of my brothers had suggested one day, bro, you should just start writing people. How about I just start writing people in community? Because I was reading so many books and authors and stuff. So I just really started writing people, like people that I read their books, people that I've heard about in community. They just started getting letters from Kevin Reese. Here, there was one particular show, Urban Legend. Shout out to Sister Lissa Jones. Came on KMOJ every Thursday, 6 p.m. And remarkable. Please go listen to some of her old shows. Sister Lissa Jones, you see this one day, I love you so much. It was someone's Sister Lissa Jones, so she had guests on there every week from community. And through that work, I got to meet so many folks in community because I write a letter to her after the show and say, yeah, I'm in prison. I was listening to y'all show. I appreciate what y'all doing. Brother Kevin here can't wait to meet y'all. And there was one particular episode, she had a guest on there, still my dear friend, chosen family mentor, Vina K, who was working at organizing apprenticeship at the time. I wasn't even sure what the organization do, what community organizing is, but she said something about criminal justice while she was on the show, so I wrote her a letter too. And as fate would have it, she responded. And not only did she responded with a community of people. I instantly went from inmate, from offender to colleague and friend, right? And I started being introduced to people as Vina K's colleague and friend. And that was part of the transformational moment. And through that work, during that time, the bridge was, we led all of the criminal justice justice organizing in the state of Minnesota from the year 2014 up until now. In 2014, October 1st, we organized our first workshop inside a prison where we brought in over 50, 60 different community members, House legislators, Lieutenant Governor, organized by men in the prison with 150 prisoners at the time. And we did community. We had lunch. We had multiple panels, and there's a call to action that we did at the end. And I'm able to say that was October 1st, 2014. And on our call to action, there was like 8 things that we wanted, including laws like restore the vote, prison phone justice. And I live in a community now where we've changed 6 of those laws now, right? I'm able to reflect on that now from our organizing then. And still to this day, I get to go into rooms that with people that know me that I don't know them. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it was a bridge of people. I built community. My reentry, much as I see now, I see others reentry, my reentry back to my community, how they received me. And an entire generation of us, and it shifted who we are, what we the assets that we are to ourselves, our families, our communities. Pretty powerful stuff. So that's what the bridge was. It was us being brought into the community conversation, although we was in prison.
Excellent, excellent. I'm gonna let Mavis and Gail make some comments, but I just wanted to say at this point, for the people who are out there listening to this, the beauty of this episode and this program right now is that we have this individual by the name of Kevin Reese, who is totally and completely reformatting how people can think about prison reform, how you can think about people who have been formerly incarcerated, and getting that imagery out of your mind that people who are in prison are sitting there just causing more problems, just wreaking havoc behind bars. Not everybody is doing that. And Kevin Reese is a perfect example of the other side of prison life, when people really can do something within that situation that completely rewrites their destiny. So I applaud you, Kevin Reese. Thank you so much for being here to share your story. So Mavis, Gail, any comments, questions before we move?
I am so impressed and amazed at who you are and the work that you've done to, I've talked to people, work with people all the time, and I tell them that, we come here with everything that we need. We come here to being everything and all of who we are. And depending on the imprints that happen to us, we either remember that or we don't. But we always have the ability to remember that. And that's what you did. You took that time to remember and to be able to then start to experience all of who you are. And and you also extended that to the generation that was there. But in doing that, you healed not just your generation, but you healed all those generations to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is amazing work. And your poetry is you're brilliant. I would like to extend it to a few people I know that are well known as poets, because it really is brilliant. And you are. And I just honor you for all that you've done. Thank you. It's incredible. Yeah.
Thank you. I feel seen.
Yeah. Wow.
Are seen. I'm trying to formulate what I want to say, and there's so much. I did want to pull a line out of your book of poetry too. I could see from the introduction your writerly self. It's just gorgeous, and I'm so glad that circumstances in your life enabled you to discover, as Gail would have said, what was always in you. But this is from Kevin Leroy. Is it Leroy or Leroy? The last couple of lines say, "'Cause I refuse to have some white man or not right man write about me. 'Cause they will tell you all the things I was or all the things I was not, but they will sure as white is a lie forget to tell you all the while I was becoming."
Yeah.
That's so brilliant. It's just so brilliant. I've had some thoughts about how it sounds to me that so much of your reshaping your destiny was self-driven. And the feed that I've always gotten about being incarcerated is that has to do with rehabilitation and paying your debt to society. What percentage-wise, just a wild guess, how much of your time did you get to spend on rediscovering yourself versus what was kind of forced on you?
Yeah, thank you. Such a great question. Justice, this is one of the things I say, justice has no expiration date, but incarceration does, right? So when we're dealing with long-term incarceration, there comes a time after incarceration where this space can no longer help a human being. It can begin to harm them, right? And once you reach that, I had to human myself through that phase in my life, say after I was there 10, 11 years. After 10, 11 years, by that time, I was already working in community. I spent my last 6, 7 years I would have had a job if I'd have left prison that day, right? So having to still experience that and became the time where you realize the limitation of such a space like incarceration. So I would say most of that is depending on the amount of incarceration, the time of incarceration, because part of my generation, we were dealing with long-term incarceration, right? Prison, it sucks, but mass incarceration didn't impact everyone the same way. Even mass incarceration is not a monolith, right? So a lot of us was doing painstaking long-term incarcerations. So it was that moment of, okay, I have to transcend these walls. Right? I'm a human. And this was part of, shout out to in our writing classes. That's writers. That was what we was about. We wasn't prison writers. We used to go to our writing classes in prison. Shout out to all of my professors, my home team, NPWW, the amazing instructors that came in and worked with us as writers and poets. And it was serious and it was community. And I have a literary community here in Minneapolis who I love as well too. And that when I talk about the transformational things in a human's life, yeah, that helped. That was part of me saying, I have to transcend these walls.
You did it mentally, spiritually. And I saw relate to your comment about the power of language. Even say to yourself, and what you say about the bars around you, the people around you. What was your relationship like with the guards? Did they see your light?
So someone who works in this, I'm a truth teller, right? So also it's important to be a part of Kevin Leroy's story. The truth is 95% of the guards was humans just like me, who just had to come and go to work every day and do what they had to do. I had a lot of problems, but on a day-to-day, it wasn't the guards. Over the years, did we have a few? Of course. Of course. But my truth is, no, that was also what made incarceration painstaking, because it's very human. It's very human and it's grueling. And when we're talking long-term incarceration, some would say those guards that watch me grow up,
Right.
Yeah, so that they wasn't the biggest. It was one of the things we consider it, back to language. One of the terms we used to call it is the silent violence.
Tell me more.
The silent violence is long-term incarceration. Every phone call costs, every dollar is sent in, there's 10%. There is no way to say sorry to the victim or actually make amends for what you've done. There's a disconnect in incarceration. If you do enough time, there's a disconnect between being punished for what you've done, and now you can tell this is just the system now. Right. Right. So that also happens in long-term incarceration. Because guess what? You never got to say sorry, or you never, as a human, I experienced that. Right. Where that didn't matter, the rest of that didn't matter. The time was the time. So you kind of seen the people's justice and then the system's justice, and you can feel them.
Sure.
You do enough time, you will feel it, right? So that's kind of how we describe that during that time, was the silent violence of it, long-term incarceration.
Excellent. So, one of the things that kind of just popped into my mind as I'm listening to your story and how you're looking at it through the lens of the system, but then also those individuals that are living within that system, is this idea that the system basically dehumanizes you.
Yeah.
Right? But what you did, and so many others that you speak very, very well of, rehumanize themselves. And so when you think about this rewriting destiny and this transformation, part of that journey is, under these circumstances, how do I rehumanize myself? So can you talk a little bit from that lens?
For sure. I would say culture. I would say, remember, humans, we are village people, and wherever we go, we're going to create tribe and community. So back to some generational stuff, that was able to happen because there was kind of a culture of it, right? There was a culture of man, when I went to prison, of man who still had dignity and pride and walked with a certain. So, even in that, we built there's a way to rehumanize ourselves, and we would have humanizing conversations. And back to my book of poetry, that's who I am. So I was also a person that came from a lot of love. Shout out to my family, my grandmothers, because those are all people I met. But I came in as who I was. And it was something very generational and magical that was able to happen. As someone who is watched the tides of it change, in the 60s, there was a lot of political organizing inside of, institutions, inside of prisons. That was one of the places that a lot of schools of thoughts come straight out of the 1960s, political prisoners, right? Still to this day. And then we had a wave of mass incarceration, and the prisons became less spaces for that type of organizing and rehumanizing of people to take place in there. So when we did it, it hadn't happened in 30, 40 years. Nothing is new under the sun. And now I've been out close to 6 years, and how the tides has changed, both political, socially. That level of organizing is not even happening inside of the prisons now, right? So you can kind of feel the tide. So many of us is home, shout out to Until We Are All Free. It's back to generational. There's a new generation. Even I've seen it now. Man, so many of my friends and people that I did time with is home now. But there are still, remnants of we have our folks that's in prison. It's another generation of kids now.
And are you working with them, Kevin?
Absolutely. They're my family and friends and community too.
Family. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
it's
because
just
the next generation needs you, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah, they're all 1
Physically
degree of
present.
separation. I know them all because I get the call. Yeah. So we'll maybe I'll just kind of talk about it a little bit, but that's one of the things is, organizationally right now, a question that we are asking. We're not in the era of mass incarceration anymore, right? That era is kind of shifted. A lot of those laws has changed. I'm living proof of, and I'm not the only one of us who's people who's done long periods in time and back in community, making huge impact in their communities. There's a whole generation of us as well, too. So what's happening inside of the prisons now is something I'm writing about and thinking about, but it's a different thing happening now.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, there was another reason why I wanted to connect with you, because I think I shared with you when we did our meet and greet that I actually had a brother who did 20 years in prison for murder, and his experience very similar to your own.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know for a long time what the situation was. And one day we were all in Sacramento, California, where he lived at the time. And, it kind of came up a little bit. And he said, look, sis, you can ask me anything you want and I'll tell you the whole story. And he sat down and he told us the whole entire story, how he ended up in that place. But his story mimics everything that you're talking about when he shared with me some of the things, because he did prison reform within prison as well. Yeah. And that rehumanizing, he did those sorts of things as well. So when I ran across you, I was like, oh my gosh, he's just like my brother. And so that kind of connection, if you will, is part of what drew me to you to tell this story in this way as well. So I wanted to ask you, on the run sheet, I actually had a poetry reading. So would you be willing to do that? For
sure.
What came looking for me?
Yeah, for sure. Give me a 30-second poet break. We're going to not take a whole minute. Give me a 30-second poet break and I'll come back.
Okay. So while he's sort of getting in that space, if you will, I just want to say to the audience, I hope that you are enjoying this conversation with Kevin Reese, co-founder and co-director of Until We Are All Free, an organization an organized movement that advocates for systemic change in the criminal justice system. So that's the conversation that we're having. He's an amazing, amazing human being. I'm very impressed with everything that he has talked about. And so I hope if you're out there listening right now, or if you pick this up a little bit later. Grab onto these gems that are coming out in this conversation. You good now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got to give a little context.
Okay.
Shout out to the poets in the room that I was writing with at the time when I wrote this poem. The title of this poem is from a prompt, right? One of our poetry instructors. Kev, who came looking for you? And it was like a question that he asked, and it drove me to this poem. This poem was the first poem that I won an award for, right? From prison. The moment of being a award writing poet, I remember him like 6 months later at our next semester coming in and giving me you won an award for that poem. Changed me. So yeah, this is one of my favorite poems. Yeah, what came looking for me? It was a well-sized anchor, eroded and stuffed inside of a clamshell, forced down my throat, sinking in my saliva. It was my uncle, chained to a Buick Skylark, eating a broken bottle that shattered like my father's eyes at the sight of his son sleeping in the womb, barbed wire attaching me to my mother. It looked like my grandma's iron pot, boiling river water and collard greens, and my callous feet pacing a prison cell with the wishing well, adjacent to a metal bunk with the elephant's tusks that sliced away follicles of my skin every time I tossed and I turned. It was my son with the afro and the mustache, standing in a field of snow with flip-flops and no gloves, holding a basketball and a bus ticket. It happened the day Minneapolis died, and a black rainbow galloped across the sky, and me and my cousins chased it.
Oh,
That is absolutely beautiful.
absolutely beautiful. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's beautiful.
Can I ask you what the black rainbow is to you?
So Anita had touched on it as well. So I went to jail for felony murder, right? Which was I was in a place where I didn't physically pull the trigger, right? And if you're not from my community, you won't fully understand how I was in that wrong place at that wrong time, because I was wrong being there, but I didn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Right? Do you know, like being a bad kid and even a tragedy happened to a bad kid?
right.
So that was also my experience incarceration. Um, and yeah, the black rainbow represents that, as I was writing, because that came looking for me too. I
Yeah.
remember it was a bad day. That was not my plan that day.
Wow.
The thing that landed me in prison, that was not my plan. I
And you
didn't
woke
wake
up
up
that
with that
morning,
on.
that was not what you thought.
Yeah, I didn't wake up with that on my heart and mind. The Vikings was playing the Seahawks. It was a Sunday.
Mhm.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It was my brother. It was he didn't pull the trigger either, but he was
Yeah,
in that space and what was going on, and so he kind of got caught up, and he was actually shot himself.
yeah,
He did 20 years,
yeah,
but the way he describes it, I went in as this person and I came out completely as a different person. And in that process, he did exactly what you did. He rewrote his destiny.
yeah.
Right.
I want to send some love to your brother. He's from the tribe. Yeah. When I said earlier, nothing is new under the sun, and there's thousands of us, maybe millions. I can't wait to meet everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to take a little bit of time and get your thoughts on the prison reform that's happening right now through the First Person Act. So for you, how significant is that? And is it really effective? Do you see it being effective? And then I'd like you to kind of share what your overall call to action is as a result of this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a federal law. This is part of some of a big package of laws and talks that's came from the system that's signaling the end of mass incarceration. So I want to name that. I want to connect those two. Laws such as this is kind of a signaling the end of mass incarceration, because mass incarceration, it was politically incorrect to be soft on crime. So anytime we see laws that's soft on crime, we realize, okay, we're entering a different era. But the appetite of the system is still the same, right? Those beds still exist. So there's new language now that exists that's making it easier to lock up a new generation, right? Because crime is different, times are different. So what's happening now, the federal prisons is actually being, filled with younger people for, mostly guns, right? So yeah, that is happening. Those were drug laws. Mass incarceration was, ended towards drug laws. Now they're creating different avenues for different things to be illegal. And those are the things that folks have a high potential of ending up in prison for now. So I see that law is something that was just the end of mass incarceration. And shout out to it, because guess what? There's a generation of people that was in there for long terms who are back. And I bet you a lot of them is back in their communities being salt of the earth. Mavis, to your question earlier, the percentage of I'm not saying prison work. I want to say this, but the studies do show folks that does long-term incarceration, the recidivism rate for them is much lower, much lower, right? It is not because prison work, is that the humans hurt so bad and have to transform their lives. And, it's more of a shot to when you lock up kids, by the time they become adults, they don't want nothing to do with y'all abusive relationship no more. So it's not that prison work. Is that usually, you horrible adults locked up kids, and we saying we don't want nothing to do with y'all no more. Yeah. So we transform our lives, but that's another soapbox. So that was what I would say to that. I think it's remarkable. It was for the folks who did long terms in incarceration, and there's avenues for so many of them coming home, which they should. But my job, I'll kind of get into that. My call to action is kind of always looking at what's next. It's part of my role as a revolutionary.
So I'm going to read some of the stuff that you indicated your call to action, right? Because I thought it was very powerful. As you tune into our podcast today, we invite you to reflect on the power of collective action. And these turbulent social and political times, our mission at Until We Are All Free has never been more urgent. We strive to uplift voices, promote justice, and advocate for equitable opportunities for all. However, we cannot do this vital work alone. We urge individuals, foundations, corporations, philanthropists to join us in our mission. Your support is imperative, not only for the future of our organization, but also for the landscapes of justice and equality we aim to create together. Those are very powerful words again.
So needed. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for saying them out loud. So the more recent present version of Kev, I'm also an executive. I'm a founder and an executive of an organization. My organization has been around 5+ years. We have a consulting group and a nonprofit, because I originally established our organization as a consulting group because it was important to create a lane for us to say that our experience and our expertise should be valued. And we are also a part of the human family. And we hired some of the solutions to some of the problems, and problems that we didn't create all of them, right? And part of the journey that currently now is the sitting at the seat as an executive, the world that this is still uncharted territories. So supporting Until We Are All Free is also not only free our bodies, but free our dreams, because that same community, that same generation, as you grow and evolve and you realize, we still need so much more, right? So that's part of our role in my organization, of making sure that we have enough to provide opportunities for our people who's mostly impacted by it. And that's still invincible ceiling there. as an executive. I'm a writer, but as an executive, I'm talking to someone who's running, they all run nonprofits. As an executive running a nonprofit, there are still barriers to us being able to have what we need to do what we really want to do. We are an amazing community. So it's my job to, make sure that there's resources for us so we can be able to be creative and impact the world.
You're a 501c3 then?
Yeah.
People could donate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go right on our website. Please buy a hoodie. Go on our website. Get y'all a hoodie, please.
I could dig it.
Yeah, you can create your own. You can make it whatever colorway you want. It'll walk you through it.
Excellent. Kevin, I remember when we met you, we had a conversation about helping people who are in the transition phase. And didn't you tell me this consulting organization you've got is for these people who are coming out to be able to come to you for guidance, so there's not falling back or becoming disenchanted or whatever. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of. So at my organization, the 501c3, that's our primary program, what we call our 3L program: land, learn, and launch. Right. We're going to help you safely land. We're going to help you learn what is it that you're trying to do that you don't know how to do. We can offer you information and relationships to help you get there, and how it is that we can support you to help you launch, right? But making sure that folks have welcome home kits. We're really a business incubator, right? So whatever your idea is, it's my job to teach you, hey, this is America. You should be an entrepreneur. So we've, helped so many of our people establish LLCs and businesses. This is your craft. You do this, but be a creative. Even if you make a penny a weekend from it, but at least it's yours. It's free. It's part of us breaking those barriers. Hey, we can still do this. So until we are free, I'm proud to support any of my people's dreams of they're trying to start a business or something that's really important to us. The consulting component of it is so much of everybody is individuals. Right. So there are times where I've had to work with families where they are receiving someone who's done 20 years and they care about their loved one. And they say they're coming home in 6 months. How the heck do we be prepared? So I do a lot of that work, both micro and macro, because that is important, because community incarceration is real. Any individual that does time in prison, there's an entire family and community that's impacted by that. And guess what? 97% of people that's in prison is coming home one day. So those folks come back into those families, and though they could be, it could go both ways.
You bet. All kinds of dynamics of that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
That's important. Yeah.
question for you as well. A lot of what I've heard you say was about, helping sort of people to rewrite their destiny. I just love that phrase, so I'm going to keep on saying it, as they're sort of evolving through the time of their sentence, and then they're coming out, and then now they're prepared in a different kind of way. Can you talk a little bit about, like, from a preventative perspective, like, how do you have conversations with young people to kind of move them in the direction of not kind of going that? So if you kind of think about it through that lens of preventative care, if you will, and work with young people. So do you do work in that arena as well?
Yeah, for sure. And all of my work with them is kind of 3 touch points: context. Always giving context to their entire why, relationships and resources, right? So many youth don't have the option to see anything different or do anything different. And the thing about humans, if they get a chance to be presented with something different options in the right context, people make different decisions. So all of our work around the preventative component of it is making sure that we're giving context to the macro, the impact, the ripple effect of all things. We're humans. None of us can run from it. So at our org, this is our personal responsibility. Hey, science, right? We really have to give that moment of truth. And then relationships. And then we extend ourselves, and because there's more of us, you're not alone. There is support for you. Guess what? You don't got to panic. You need $60. You really don't got to do nothing crazy. You really can just, we can get you $60, right? and, resources. We're kinesthetic people. People want things that's real that they can feel. It's not the only way to show love and change things, but let's be honest, back to science. It takes resources to change the world.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
And it takes someone believing in them, right?
Yeah.
To help them believe in themselves. Yeah.
So also when I think about until we are all free, none of us are free. That reverberates, if you will, with me in my anti-racism work.
Yes,
Because if I look at where we are now and the shackles of division and the shackles of racism, all of those things that are there systematically don't just impact the individuals who are most affected by that. It actually impacts all of us. And so until I am free from the shackles of racism, you're not going to be free from the shackles of racism. Those people who kind of espouse that is their way of living, you're just as shackled as I am. It's just in a different way.
For sure.
The whole notion of until we are free, none of us are free can apply in so many different areas.
But it isn't just to Black people, it's to white people too, that until you are free, we are not free. No one is free.
That is exactly the point that I'm making. That is exactly the point. So we got about 2 minutes left. So I think I'm going to move into a closing.
I'll close with that. Just a word to that. The inflection point of my organization being until we are all free. Back to God, to your first question, it was God. Not until Kevin Reese is free, but until we are all free. Because when I was in prison, I came to a moment and say, make sure that you're human enough to make sure prison justice ain't the most important movement that ever happened in the world. There's other people oppressed in the world. So it was important at the inception of the organization that it was something that was able to pause at any human being, any human injustice and say, oh, if you ain't free, I ain't free in that either. So shout out to, I wanted to close with that. That is who until we are all free is. I wanted to make sure that I could always pause and say, yeah.
So I just want to close out with this. Is it possible to imagine a future free from the shackles of divisiveness and divisive conversation? I would think from this conversation, all of us believe that the answer to that question is yes. And the fact of the matter is we all have a role to play. The key is transformative engagement. So for all of you who are listening out there or watching this, watching or listening, the question is, what will you do to contribute? So you can start by joining the conversation. Inflection Point Podcast, we actually have a private Facebook page, and it's under the name Inflection Point Podcast. If you just kind of go on Facebook, you can find our group. We invite you to join our group, join the conversation, and all of that. So we literally have like 60 seconds left. So Kevin, I just want to say I am so grateful that we had the opportunity to have this conversation and have you be a guest on our show. I applaud you and I applaud your work.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Y'all are manifestations of prayers, so it should give us all hope. And anyone that sees this, there should be hope that we get into doing the work, and there was people that honored it, that we don't know another time.
Yes.
And now we know each other. We share.
Right.
And so this is living proof of the question.
It is.
So to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. We are here every first and third Wednesday on Transformation Talk Radio. So at this point, we're signing off and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Inflection Point Podcast, where our mantra is cultivating change from the inside out. The journey towards anti-racism and social change doesn't stop here. Truth, reconciliation, and healing come from ongoing, open, honest, and deliberate conversations. Continue to dive in and deconstruct your thoughts, ideas, and beliefs as we band together to manifest social change. Tune in to Inflection Point Podcast every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more conversations about how we can cultivate change from the inside out.